What's up, everybody? Jeremy Gerard from Mythic Customs here with one of my short customizing tutorial videos. Today, we're going to do some popping and swapping. This is kind of a Mythic Legions Customizing 101 style episode. And while this may seem very repetitive based on some of the other videos I've shot in the past, I wanted to do a new one in part because some of those old videos had even worse video and audio quality than I have today. I know this is still not perfect, but it's much better than it was when I first got started. But additionally, some of those older videos that they kind of fall to the bottom. I wanted something new and fresh. And the idea of doing a starter video with such a what may seem like such a basic concept to anyone that's ever customized Mythic Legions is because there are still so many people out there, so many Legions fans who have never pulled apart one of these figures. And I was made aware of this recently at Legions Con. So at Legions Con in November, there was a really cool breakout session that happened that was sponsored by Wolf King Customs. So they had a Pop and Swap Academy type event where if you weren't part of it, if you haven't heard about it, what basically happened was Len and the group from Team Wolf King, Curtis, got a whole bunch of different artists, myself included, Bill from Dorklair, David Williams, Luis Torres, a number of us were in that room, and they invited some fans who were at Legions Con who had really never customized, never popped and swapped. And they paired up these, new customizers, basically, these would-be customizers with people like myself. And we got to talk them through the process. And I was having a conversation with someone, and we had a figure in hand. It actually happened to be a Dark Templar Legion builder, and we popped it apart. And what I did was I popped a piece off, and then I had him do it. And to see that look of recognition in his eyes, to see him say like, "Oh my goodness, this was so easy to do. The possibilities this opens up are incredible." It made me realize how many people have never done this, some of whom may be afraid they're going to break their figure. So what I wanted to do today was kind of do a you work with me type video where we're going to pop and swap. And I actually have a Dark Templar Legion builder and I have a skeleton. These are from the Deluxe Legion Builders wave. So these are still pretty readily available at some of the approved retailers for Four Horsemen Studios. But I've got a Dark Templar and I've got a skeleton, and we're going to kind of pop and swap and mix and match these a little bit. So this is customizing 101, okay? Kit bashing if you want. We're not going to be painting anything. We're not going to be adding, custom 3D printed heads. We're just going to be pulling these things apart and messing around with them. Now, one thing to realize is there are two different kinds of Mythic Legions figures, essentially. Actually, there's more than that when you get into ogres and centaurs and horses and trolls. But for the basic figures, there's basically what's called the 1.0 figures, which these guys are 1.0 figures. And there's the 2.0. So the 2.0 would be the goblins, the females, the elves, the smaller, thinner frames. By and large, the parts from 1.0 and 2.0 don't go together. Now, there are some exceptions. I'm not going to get into all the exceptions today. What we're going to talk about is these 1.0 figures. The knights, the skeletons, a lot of the orcs. These are your typical 1.0 figures. They're the bigger figures, the original bodies that came out with the line. So what you can do here is if you're watching this video and you don't have a Mythic Legions figure in hand, pause that video, go grab one because we're going to do this together. I'll wait. Okay, so now you should have that figure in hand, right? What we're going to do is we're going to pop this figure apart. Now, one thing to realize when you're popping these figures apart is they're meant to come apart. Okay, you're not doing anything that they weren't meant to do. Now, does that mean you can't break it? No, of course not. You could break it. It's still a possibility. I have popped apart literally hundreds of Mythic Legions figure in my day. I have done well over 500 Mythic Legions customs over the number of years. I've pulled apart so many of these. I've broken a couple. Yeah, there have been a few times that I've pulled something apart and it's broken, but it is definitely a rarity. So if you take your time and you do it right, the odds are you aren't going to break this. Now, when in doubt, if you ever have a part that gives you trouble, what you want, where did I put it, is you want to use heat So either hot air or hot water. I'm going to use hot air today. Having a hair dryer that you can use to heat up the area you're trying to pop is helpful. It softens the plastic. It makes things come apart easier. You don't need it for every part though. So what I want you to do is I want you to take this figure. Now, the easiest thing that people typically remove are the heads. And this is because a lot of figures come with multiple heads. So they're comfortable removing the heads. When you remove the head, there were two kinds of figures. If it's a bare torso, the neck peg is integrated into the torso as part of that piece. So the neck peg's not going to come out. If you are on any of the other bodies, any of these armored bodies, the neck is a separate piece. So when you pull the head off, the neck may come as well. So what I'm going to do here is with this figure here, I'm going to pop off these little attachments on the head. So go ahead. If you have a head that has attachments, I'm going to pop those off. Now, even just something like that, right? There's other figures that come with different horns. Just by popping these out, you could pop different horns in there to get a totally different look. I'm going to pull that head off. So I'm just going to grab it. I'm going to put my thumb like right underneath the front, and I'm just going to pull upwards. So now see that neck came out with it. That neck port came out. Now, if I want to remove that, it's hard to get a grip on that here. Okay, that is tough. You don't want to use something like pliers, because pliers, if you start to put it, you're going to rip the plastic apart. This is a perfect example of, I'm going to get my heat and I'm going to heat this up. Maybe just like 30 seconds or so. You don't need a long time. I'm just going to soften up that plastic. Now, it does get a little warm on your hands, so you could certainly put this in some kind of holder to, make it easier on your hands. I'm used to it, so it doesn't bother me. So just doing that, now I softened it up enough that I could easily just pop it out, okay? Just something like that makes it easier to do. Now, we've got our figure here. We've got these shoulder pauldrons, this shoulder armor. You know shoulder armor is removable. Just pull it right out the back, okay? So that's what I'm going to do. These pegs are pretty sturdy. It's unlikely you're going to break them off. That is, I have done that once. But trying to pull it backwards instead of, because the way that it's in there, if you pull down, it does work, but you're more likely to kind of pull that a little bit. So I try to pull out and down at the same time a little bit. Now it's here where it gets interesting. We're going to remove the torso on this figure, okay? Actually, you know what? Before we do the torso, let's do the arms. So this is when I was at Legion's Con, this is what I did. They got that look of recognition. So I'm going to take the arm and I'm going to lift it up, right? And it's just pegged right in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of lift up and out. Okay, up and out. That's what I'm doing. Go ahead and do that. Just move the arm up. I'm going to lift it up and out. Again, if you have a hard time, if it's not working for you, hit it with some heat. Just hitting it with some heat will soften that plastic, make the stuff come apart a lot easier. Now, on the arms themselves, there are multiple pieces here. There are the hands. So there's different hands and feet packs. This hand here is an armored hand. Say you wanted to use one of the bare hands that come in the hand and feet pack, just pulling that hand right out at the wrist pops it right out. Okay, got a little hole in there that you could pop that new hand in. This lower gauntlet here, that pops apart as well. What I like to do is the way that lip is on there is I like to get my finger right under that lip and just pull it apart. Okay, again, it's going to be a broken record when I keep saying this, but if you have any resistance, all you need to do is use some heat. Now I'm going to put these pieces back together. And same thing, if you're having a hard time putting them together, this is important. So say that I was having a hard time putting this peg back onto the glove here. You always want to heat the hole. Okay, you always want to heat the port that you're plugging the peg into. You don't really want to heat the peg up. If you have them both heated and you need to cool one off, run the part that you want to be solid again under cold water, put in the refrigerator for 30 seconds. Either way, when you cool it off, it'll be nice and hard. If you use the blow dryer on that, that whole piece, that will make it more pliable. And if you are having any trouble putting them together, it'll make it go together a little bit easier. Back to that torso. So the torso is on like a rocker ball. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab this and you're going to kind of rock it off. Okay. You're trying to pop it off. Okay. So you see there's a hole and there's a peg on that. This waist piece just slips right off. Little hole goes right on that ball there. The way that it's got that crevice, the torso sits in there. And if I pop the torso, see, if I pop them together without that waist piece, you can see there's this like gap. That's what that waist piece covers. But what you're doing when you pull it apart is, see, without that waist piece there, you see I'm pulling and it's just popping right off. Okay. Now that loin piece in front, that comes right off. That's an easy one, just a little bit of peg there. The legs come apart as well. If you wanted, you can pull them off at the hips. I don't often do that because whenever you need legs, you need hips as well. And that kind of pelvis piece, it's no matter what figure you're doing, it's going to be covered. So it usually doesn't matter which one you use, but you can pull them out at the hips there if you need to. There's also the lower legs. If you want to change the lower legs here, there's also the feet. So the feet are another one that people swap, again, in part because there are hand and feet packs. Some of the figures that come with 2 sets of feet, like the Deluxe Gladiator or the Furious 4 set, the extra feet have the pegs already on them. So all you'd have to do is pull that feet down, and that ankle peg, if it's already on the other feet, you just plug the other ankle peg in there. If you're doing it with a hand and foot pack that doesn't have ankle pegs, or if you actually want to use this ankle because of the color, what you're going to do, this is one of the hardest parts to get out on the figure because of how small it is. You will have to heat this. Okay, you will have to heat this foot so you can pull that ankle peg out. When you do so, what you're going to see is there's the larger peg, which goes in the larger hole on the bottom of the feet. There's a small peg that's in the foot. Any foot, the foot packs, they have the little holes. That little tiny peg would go in that hole on the foot. Once again, heat up the hole on the foot, make sure the peg is solid, pop it in, you're good to go. You just put it here. Okay, so one of the things I'm going to do is I just pulled apart a Deluxe Legion Builder, the Dark Templar. I'm going to do the same thing for the skeleton. I'm going to pop that head off. The neck stayed on. Pop the neck off. This particular one also has a neck piece. Some of them, the Dark Templar didn't have one. Some of them have this neck armor, which what it is it's just a little piece that pegs right into a hole behind the neck. So pull that off. I'm going to pull off the pauldrons here. These particular pauldrons are a little tricky because they're so spiky. You want to watch out for your hands. Okay, I'm going to pull this apart, pull it off. And what I'm doing here is I'm going to pull off these arms. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that Dark Templar torso again, and I'm going to peg these skeleton arms into that Dark Templar body. They fit perfectly. I pulled them out of one, I peg them into the other. No problem there, okay? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that skeleton lower body, I'm going to pull off the loin piece that was there. I'm going to peg in instead the loin piece that came with the Dark Templar, and I'll use, I'll use the waist armor that came with the skeleton. So again, the waist armor just has a hole, goes right over the ball. Now, to put this on, you're really just going to be pressing this down. Again, right? If it gives you trouble, heat up this little peg there. Not peg, hit up the hole. So I'm going to push this right down. Okay, nice snap there. Let's see, I'm going to grab that skeleton neck peg there. I'm going to grab this big spiky armor from the skeleton. Big spiky armor, peg that in to the back, put the skeleton head back on, and something as simple as that, I swapped out the Dark Templar torso pieces with the rest of the skeleton, so now I have this undead Templar. And then I can take the parts of that knight that I had, I'll put all those pieces together. I'll put the loin piece in from the skeleton, put that waist piece on. This is the torso that came with the skeleton. The colors are very, very close. That was intentional. The colors in the Deluxe Legion Builders Wave, a lot of them were made to go together really, really well. Pop these arms in. I'm going to put that neck piece back in, just pegs it right into that back piece there. Put the shoulder armor on. Plug the neg into the neck port. Pop that head back on. So right there, I've just made myself a little knight figure. So he's not a Templar anymore. He doesn't have that iconic Templar look. But super quick, taking two figures and just swapping parts over the course of a couple minutes while I'm recording a video, you get two totally different looks. So this is a great way to start getting figures and just popping the parts and swapping them together and see what works. My friend Bill Junowski, Dorklair is his YouTube channel. He does a wonderful job of combining figures and just popping and swapping. A lot of times when he does his Mythic Legions figure reviews, he actually does a bunch of them at the end where he swaps parts. That's all he's doing. He comes up with great recipes, and he's not painting and he's not using third-party pieces. All he's doing is swapping parts amongst existing Mythic Legions figures. So if you're thinking of diving in to Mythic Legions customizing, I'm going to record a number of videos that are going to be like this one, that are going to be very basic, take you through some of those steps. But this is a great place to start. If you've never pulled apart any of your figures, I suggest, my hope is in this new year, grab yourself a couple extra figures. Grab some of these Deluxe Legion Builders solely for the purpose of playing around with them, popping them apart, swapping them into different combinations. You would be amazed not only at how much fun you're going to have, but how cool the creations you are going to make will look. Thank you very much for tuning in to my video. If you find videos like this enjoyable and useful, please give the video a like. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments. And certainly if you're not already subscribed to the channel, consider doing so. So when I go live with my weekly Mythic Conversation show, or when I post a tutorial video like this, you are notified immediately. Thank you all very much for tuning in. I can't wait to see what you make.